Right. 7 o'clock, so I'll call to order the regular meeting of the Common Council of the City of Platteville for Tuesday, February 13th, 2018. Start with roll call.
Don Francis.
Here.
Barb Stockhausen is excused. Ken Killian.
Here.
Eileen Nichols.
Here.
Tom Knoll.
Here.
Catherine Westaby.
Here.
Barbara Doss.
Here. First item is consideration of the consent calendar. The following items may be approved on a single motion and vote due to their routine nature or previous discussion. Please indicate to the council president if you would prefer separate discussion and action. A is council minutes from the January 23rd, 18 meeting. Is payment of bills. C, financial report for January. D is appointments to boards and commissions, and there are 2 this evening. For the Board of Review, Tom Lindahl. And to complete a vacancy on the Tourism Committee, Michael Bretner. E is licenses, change of agents, Revelry LLC, Platteville. Premises is 30 North 2nd Street. Platteville Elks Lodge. In Hill. 2, temporary Class B to sell fermented malt beverages and wine at the St. Augustine's University Parish for fish fry on February 16th and March 2nd from 4:30 until 8 p.m. 3, in our packet, 1-year and 2-year operator to sell and serve alcohol licenses. And F, 2 permits. 1 is a banner for the American Cancer Society Relay for Life from April 1 through April 21st. 2 is for a couple of runs, a 5K by a High Vibe on March 17th, and 5K by the Kiwanis Club to benefit the Badger Camp on.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second, and we'll vote.
I have one thing I'd like to add, I believe. That's to the minutes. I talked to Howard about this briefly, and it's underneath comments, observations.
And if you would like to discuss that separately, then we would separate that out.
I
Talking
want
about,
to add one word.
all right, add one word.
Well, the word is in the second paragraph. It is, there is no additional cost.
Well, what word are you adding? Additional, okay. Board concurs with that. All right, so we have a motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Francis.
Yes.
Killian.
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
Knoll.
Yes.
Westaby.
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next is citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, if any, and we have no requests this evening, so we'll go on to the
I have
reports.
one.
Okay.
Person came up, so this is from a citizen, not
Okay.
for me. Came up to me at Quick Trip and said, doesn't like all the cigarette butts on Main Street. Passed this on to Main Street people. Are there any cigarette containers, holders? I went down Sunday, I couldn't see any, so I don't know what's,
Are you asking if they're provided by the city or businesses, or
or by whomever, whether it's Main Street or what.
not familiar with, not there any?
Who's on, who goes to Main Street?
I go to Main Street, but we have not discussed that. I will definitely take it to Main Street.
And this is a long-term issue. I was reading something the other day, I was sorting through some stuff and writing a letter about it in 2008.
Oh, good to bring it up. Next is reports, Board Commission Committee minutes in our packet. Police and Fire Commission, Francis.
Nothing to add?
Commission on Aging, Noel.
Nothing to add.
Museum Board, Westaby.
Nothing to add.
Historic Preservation Commission, Killian.
Have no additions.
Other reports in our packet, the Water and Sewer Financial Report for January, also the January Airport Financial Report, and then Department Progress Reports. Questions or comments on any of that?
I do see we have some museum programs coming up. On the 25th, I think there's a program here on Black women's suffrage. I think on a Sunday afternoon. Or Sunday evening.
If residents would go to our website and visit the community calendar, they can find all of the scheduled Lyceum events that will be happening, I think, February, March, and April.
Else have any questions or comments?
They're all at City Hall, if said.
Correct, they're all at City Auditorium.
There was one brochure out that listed all these things, but didn't.
Other comments, questions? All right, then we're gonna go on to the first action item, Resolution 1803, authorizing a $1 state trust fund loan.
Per the terms of the developer agreement for TID, for TID 7, this is the Pioneer Forward redevelopment project, and there was a total of 1.3 million in TID assistance that was offered to the developer. During the discussions as this development unfolded and during the long-range financial planning process, it was decided that this loan would be taken out from the state trust fund, which is the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands Trust Fund. And so you can see from the staff report here that the interest rate on this loan is 4%, and it will have a term of 20 years. It can be prepaid without penalty, and the general obligation debt of the city of Platteville, and it will be included in the city's borrowing capacity. There was a slide that was presented back when the development was proposed, and you have that available to you to see where that 1.3 million was originally planned.
I would just add once again that there's a guaranteed tax payment that will cover both the principal and interest payments for this loan, and the roughly 21,000, I think, of taxes that the city was currently collecting on unredeveloped site.
Questions, anyone?
With the approval of this resolution, the resolution is provided by the trust fund, and with the approval of the resolution, then the complete application can be submitted to the trust fund. They have already secured the funds for the city, and so then the loan will get processed and funded.
I make a motion we adopt Resolution 1803, providing for the borrowing of $1.3 million from the Wisconsin State Trust Funds.
State Board of Commissioners of... All right, is there a second?
Second.
I plan to vote no. I give my reasons at the time I vote no.
If it addresses this particular borrowing, yes.
Yes, it's a general theme. Okay, I plan to vote no on this issue. I believe Platteville has spent too much. We have had excess expenditures. One, the library, we're now paying $18,000 a month for a free library, which will cost us $1.5 million after about 7 years, and we don't know if we're going to own it at the end or not. Two, the EMS building. We in the township and the city are paying for the building, and that is an excess. Number three, we're paying too much as far as this development at the Ford Garage site. No funds are going to the general fund, as I pointed out before. Also, the cost of services, how will these be paid for? The cost of police, the cost of fire service for this project. So those are just a few things. I'm not going into the Gates Hotel situation, but I'm voting no on this.
All right, Vote.
Francis.
Yes.
Killian.
No.
Nichols. Dahl.
Yes.
Westerby.
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next item is ordinance 1801, amending the official traffic map for Richard Street. Howard?
Yes, thank you. When the Common Council approved the daycare business at 285 Richard Street, it included a provision that the parking ordinances be changed to allow permit parking or 15-minute parking on both sides of Richard Street between Staley and Straw. Based on, this would allow for winter alternate side parking. We've reviewed this, and staff is suggesting that we have the same parking restrictions, permit parking or 15-minute parking restrictions on both sides of Richard Street from Chestnut to Straw for this daycare that was approved and for a previous daycare that's on a different corner.
Questions? Is there a motion?
I move that we approve ordinance number 18-01, ordinance which amends the official traffic.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Francis.
Yes.
Killian.
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
Dahl.
Yes.
Westerby.
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next is alderperson resignation and filling corresponding vacancy. And Catherine?
Yes, I will start, but I believe someone else will fill the vacancy. This was not an easy decision to start. The past two were very rewarding. But the opportunity to serve the Platteville community life by meeting with all the outstanding, innovative that make Platteville a great place to live. However, I must focus on my family at this time. We are expecting our first child in July. Not continue to commit the I know that I will continue to volunteer with various groups, but that will most likely go a couple of months afterwards. But yes, I am resigning.
We are sorry to see you leave, but we respect.
I say we applaud Catherine for the work that she's done.
So you will have one more meeting, as I understand it, Catherine?
Yes, there will be one more meeting.
All right. When Catherine made the city manager and President Pro Tem aware of this, we did consult staff and also the attorney as to options for placing this position. So in front of the council, that we have a one-page document that lists 3 options. Leave the position vacant until the term expires in April of 2019. We could appoint for the remainder of the term, or we could order a special election, which would be according to state statute, but that would not occur until November 6th of 2018. That individual would only serve the remainder of the existing term. So in discussing these, Council President and Pro Tem would recommend option 2 be pursued, which is appoint for the remainder of the term, and propose a following timeline. And I'm going to read this simply because that would allow the public to also be aware of what we might choose to do. Week of February 11th, now we would announce the vacancy and do a press release. And we would ask candidates who are interested in serving the remainder of the term to submit a one-page letter of interest with some questions that would be available for you to answer. Then on March 9th, letter of interest would be due. March 13th, we would have a council work session. And on the March 27th council meeting, nomination for the appointment would be made in a council. That would then allow that person to be available for the April 17th council work session when the April election is completed and we have other members who are up for re-election. So that is the recommendation of the President and Pro Tem. Open for council discussion as to whether or not you believe that is the best method to approach this, or if you are wanting to discuss either number 1 or number 3. Discussions, comments, references. Would like to vote this evening so that we can start the process if we are indeed.
The start option 2, it still leaves us the think of doing,
If we would not have any candidates, you're saying, Ken?
right.
That would depend, I would assume that that would be possible. I don't know what that timeline is. So much of this is incredibly regulated by state statute. For instance, I said, why can't we just have that election with the gubernatorial primary in August? Because there's a general gubernatorial primary but by state statute, the only date it could be is November 9th. So a lot of it's regulated in terms of that, so we'd probably just have to look that up. I make a motion that we adopt this procedure for filling the vacancy that will occur at the end of this month.
Option number 2, waiting for remainder of the
The option number 2.
I'll second.
motion in a second. Vote.
Francis,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes,
Nichols,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Westerby, Doss.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. Those are the only action items we have this evening. We do have for information and discussion a proposal to refinance TID 5 revenue bond.
Back in 2014, the city issued a revenue bond to a bank to fund the payment of a balance that was owed to the developer in TID 5. And the bond itself included a reset in 2018. So it had a fixed interest rate of 2.75%, but the agreement included a reset to a new fixed rate, which would equal the 5-year Treasury note rate plus 2%. And so it was anticipated that the interest rate would not be very favorable to the city when that reset took place. There was a window of interest rate. It was a floor of 3.25% and no greater than 5%. Nevertheless, it was felt it would be in the best interest of the city to seek to refinance this revenue bond. Because it's a revenue bond, it does not count against the general obligation capacity, borrowing capacity of the city. It is funded by the TID 5 tax increment. So staff went out, invited banks of the city of Platteville to submit a proposal to refinance this revenue bond. At that time, the principal stood at $1,895,000. And so this information is to recommend that the proposal that was most favorable, which was from Mound City Bank, be accepted. So this would be coming back to the next council meeting for action, and then if approved, we would pursue refinancing this revenue bond with a new revenue bond. And you can see that the interest rate being offered by Mound City Bank is 2.49% fixed rate for 5 years, which would be the complete term of the bond. It's a lot of information. Is there any questions? Can I explain anything any further?
who is the developer?
The original developer, the name escapes me, TID 5.
This was
Platteville Development Group.
Platteville
Development Group.
Development Group. And what structures did they put up?
There was infrastructure for TID 5, and there was a developer agreement. There were payments that were being made to the developer, but back in 2014, it was decided that it would be in the best interest of the city to pay the balance that was owed to the developer and to fund that payment through the taking out of a revenue bond. Again, that does not count against the general obligation borrowing capacity of the city.
That would mean that the TID revenue will continue to be the same, but less will have to be paid for this bond. Is that correct?
Right, so the principal and interest, well, the principal payments will be the same, but the interest payments, well, it's actually, to me, it's a twofold benefit. If we did nothing, the interest rates would go up to that 5% most likely. The current Treasury bond rate is increasing every month in the current environment, and then we would have to tack on that additional 2%. So our interest rate would go from 2.75 to most likely very close to 5%. So that would be a lot of additional cost that would be paid through that tax increment, but then it would leave less tax increment to use for other purposes. So it's definitely in our best interest to go ahead and refinance. But not only that, the rate that we're being offered by Mound City Bank is actually less than the original rate that we got on this 2014 revenue bond. So the original rate was 2.75%. We're now going to actually decrease that to 2.49% if the council were to approve this at the next meeting.
Any other questions or comments? Right. Next is ribbons on Main Street.
Yes. Family Advocates of Grant County has approached the city with a request to put up sexual assault awareness ribbons on Main Street for the month of April. This would be a precedent-setting request, and we're seeking guidance on whether ribbons on public light poles are appropriate or desirable. We're talking about the decorative black light poles on Main Street. And so if the answer is yes, we have an attached policy that we would want to adopt. The questions would talk about, we have some concerns regarding adding to the clutter, visual clutter on Main Street, and whether or not it would be possible to keep the ribbons looking good for the entire time period. So, yeah.
I did distribute some additional feedback from the Main Street director, and I think he proposes an alternative of potentially having the business display the ribbons in their window.
You have a copy of that memo, street director, in front of you. He has talked to the merchants, and most of them, the businesses, most of them would prefer not to have it. Actually, it's clear there are concerns, he says, about items being vandalized or affected by the weather, and that in the past they have exhibited those banners to do so, the ribbons inside their store, and they would that. Program is not advocating.
Well, this would be up to the individual merchants as to whether or not.
Right, they could display.
No, I think, Ken, that the request from Family Advocates is, without regard to the merchants on Main Street, they want the ability to put ribbons on poles.
Correct.
So they are not asking the merchants, they're saying the city should have a policy that allows them to do that. Or, you know, I'm not interested in doing that, because it seems to me like we would potentially have every different color ribbon imaginable, some picked up, some not picked up, some torn, some not torn. I don't think it's a good policy to add clutter like that to our Main Street. We're working very hard to make it attractive. I don't know that that would make it real attractive.
I would agree that I would not probably set the precedent either, and I know that we have a place for banners on Water Street that asked to display there, in this case, whatever the program is, so I think that that's the option that I would prefer. But it's not up for action this evening.
I don't know that I'm interested in adopting. I mean, we don't have to adopt a policy, right? So if we're just not interested in adopting a policy, I mean, do we have to take action?
You could provide direction to us tonight. If you're not interested in adopting a policy, we don't need to bring it back.
How many ribbons are we talking about? How many poles, Howard?
I didn't count them, but there's quite a few, 40 or 50 on Main Street proper, between Water and Chestnut. I think there's like 65 to 70 if you include the ones to the museum, from the museum down to Hickory Street.
Is there interest from council members in having this brought back, or?
I would like to see it brought back. I'd like to see the family advocates bring in an example of a ribbon. What it's made of, how it's going to be attached.
I guess the question is whether or not the council back. I do not want to bring it back. Whether they're, you know, regardless of what kind of ribbons they are, Ken, it isn't the family advocates say it's the idea of putting ribbons on the light poles. I'm not in agreement with that.
I'm not interested in either because it would set a precedent to the dozens of other possible ribbons and has to be put up in.
Right, I'm seeing a consensus.
Okay.
But certainly make them aware, and if they're not aware of the fact that they could put a banner up on.
And they could contact Jack with the Main Street program about contact.
All right, that concludes our televised portion. We are going into a work session for assigned parking and also housing study requests for proposals.